If there's one thing that can't be surpassed on this planet, it's Mother Nature and her various forms of natural disasters. Mighty typhoons to torrential rainfall, these are events that should not be taken lightly. But even among these explosive forces, there are record breakers who take it to new heights of destruction and chaos. Here are 12 times when natural events hit the record books. Before we begin, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe and click the notification bell for more amazing content. Number 12. The Lighthouse of CATATUMBO. In western Venezuela over the Catatumbo River, there is a storm that never ceases. Starting at 7 p.m. every night, lightning crashes over the water for 10 hours, 260 nights each year. Nobody knows for sure why it happens. Up until recently, the leading theory was that it had something to do with uranium in the bedrock, although scientists are starting to doubt that. Today, the leading theory is a complicated one. It posits that the shape of the mountains causes warm trade winds to collide with cold air from the Andes. That collision is then fueled by the rapidly evaporating water below and methane from a nearby oil field. Nobody actually knows for sure, though, why it happens. Everything about it is mysterious, including one moment in 2010 when it inexplicably stopped. One day, the storm just died down without explanation and seemed for a while to be over. Then, after 6 weeks of silence, it sparked up again and has been raging ever since. Number 11. Smoke that stayed for 6 months. Wildfires cause billions of dollars in damages. They also upset the daily life of millions of people by forcing them to leave their homes and their entire lives behind in the wake of the fire. Once it picks up momentum, it's very hard to stop the spread of such a fire. Most of us have heard about the crazy wildfires that burned through Australia from June 2019 to May 2020. Around 46 million acres were lost to this disaster and an estimated $103 billion in damages. Because of the scale and the length of the 2020 Australian wildfires, it had other far-reaching repercussions on the environment. One thing which scientists noticed was the amount of smoke it produced and pushed into the atmosphere. It in fact produced a record-breaking amount of smoke for any bushfire to date. The smoke managed to circumnavigate the entire world by leaving the Australian coast from the east and returning back to the continent from the west. This was done in just 2 weeks, which is incredibly fast. Hopefully, Australia is better prepared to tackle any future wildfire outbreaks that might happen. Number 10. The coldest cloud. Do you enjoy lying on the ground and doing a bit of cloud gazing? This relaxing pastime is a great way to appreciate the cosmos and the interesting shapes that nature throws at us. If you're lucky, you might just get to see the coldest cloud out there. Of course, there's no way to know if a cloud is cold just by looking at it, but this is where science comes into the picture. The coldest cloud recorded was discovered in 2018, and it was peacefully gliding over the Pacific Ocean. Because it was so cold, it was interfering with satellites, and they couldn't get a proper reading of its temperature. But thanks to the infrared sensor on board an NOAA satellite, it managed to scan the cloud and came up with a record-breaking number. It measured an incredible minus 167.8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is unlike any other cloud recorded before. A reason for this extreme temperature is because of a phenomenon called overshooting tops. Basically, it means that the top of the cloud goes beyond the lowest layer of the atmosphere and breaches into the very cold stratosphere. This cloud too had an overshooting top, though this still couldn't explain why it was 86 degrees Fahrenheit colder than all the other clouds ever recorded. Strange indeed. Number 9. The longest-lasting aftershocks. Earthquakes are another way of showing how planet Earth is very much alive. If you don't live in seismic regions, then you've probably never experienced the destructive force of these natural events. After an earthquake, there are usually aftershocks that follow, but there are cases where they've been known to last for more than a century. For example, a devastating earthquake hit central Washington state in 1872, and scientists have recently discovered that its aftershocks are still felt today, 149 years later. Central Washington state is never known for being seismically active, but the town of Entiat in this region has experienced hundreds of earthquakes in the past 100 years. Scientists believe that these tremors are probably connected to the big one that happened in 1872. Aftershocks have a specific marking which are different from earthquakes, and the markings left by the tremors in Entiat match that of aftershocks. This can be traced back to the big quake from 149 years ago. Similar long-lasting aftershocks have been studied in Japan and Spain, which makes you wonder how centuries mean nothing in the geological scale. Number 8. The truth about Beijing's sandstorm. It's no news that air quality in China is nothing to brag about. But when a sandstorm hit the capital city of Beijing in 2021, it took air quality level to a new low. Gale force winds caused by the storm from Mongolia and northwestern China scooped up enormous amounts of sand from the Gobi Desert and brought it all the way to Beijing. When it finally reached the city, the residents were shocked to see Beijing being completely enveloped by orange dust. What's worse, this wasn't a sandstorm but a dust storm. The latter carries much more tinier particles than a sandstorm and can easily penetrate the lung. It was on a level almost double that of the hazardous stage set by the Beijing Air Pollution Real-Time Quality Index. The WHO recommends that particulate levels should not exceed 20 micrograms per cubic meter in a 24-hour period. This dust storm contained 999 micrograms per cubic meter, so this was not good news. Number 7. Black Sunday. We've all heard of Black Friday, a day when many stores offer highly discounted offers. Black Sunday, however, is a lot more ominous. Families living in the Great Plains in the US are familiar with the term black blizzards. They're exactly what they sound like, dust storms which are incredibly dense that it practically blocks out any light in its path. Well, one of the worst black blizzards hit this region on April 14, 1935 and shrouded the area in complete darkness. The storm measured 1,000 miles in length and affected the states of Oklahoma and Texas. People had to take shelter in their homes and cars and couldn't see one another even when standing next to each other. It caused massive economic and agricultural damage, and a lot of animals died as well. The Black Sunday storm is said to have displaced 300 million tons of topsoil from the prairie region and was caused by drought, erosion, bare soil, and wind. Number 6. The Tri-State Tornado. Hollywood movies like Twister have given us a good idea of how bad tornadoes can get. The Tri-State Tornado is probably one of the worst on a scale of deadliness. 1925 was not a good year in the United States when a cluster of 12 big twisters descended on the nation. The Tri-State Tornado was part of this cluster and is still considered as the deadliest tornado in US history. At its peak intensity, the tornado was more than a mile in diameter and was moving at a pace of 70 miles per hour. It was not graded at the time, but most believe it was probably an EF5 tornado, which is the most dangerous type on the Fujita scale. It destroyed 15,000 homes and wiped out 164 square miles of land with a total damage of $1.4 billion. It left behind a 219-mile-long track as it made its way through southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, and finally into southwestern Indiana. This track is considered the longest ever recorded. The tornado outbreak of 1925 killed 747 people and more than 2,298 were injured, making it the deadliest tornado outbreak in US history. Number 5. London's killer fog solved. Fog adds an air of mystery to the environment, but not when it's smog. The infamous Great Smog of London is considered as the worst air pollution crisis that affected the United Kingdom. Things got really dark one fine day in London in 1952. The smog took over the entire city in December and stuck around for 5 days. People didn't panic during this event since Londoners are used to fogs on a routine basis. Though at the time it wasn't understood, the smog descended over the city due to unusually cold weather, anticyclone and windless conditions coupled with air particulates from coal mining operations. The whole event claimed the lives of around 12,000 people, and around 100,000 people were made ill by its effects on the respiratory system. London has experienced poor air quality since the 13th century, but this incident alone was the worst in its history. Number 4. Longest heat wave. Phoenix finally set the hellish record no one wanted in 2020, marking the most days in a calendar year to reach 100 degrees or higher. The National Weather Service in Phoenix reported the temperature hit 100 degrees in 2020. At 144 days of triple-digit highs, temperature broke the record of 143 days set in 1989. Phoenix tied that record in October 2020. The new number of 144 days sets a record going back to 1896, the first full year for which weather records were kept, according to Marvin Percher, meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Phoenix. Of course, a record like this is pretty tough to beat, so we never really thought that we would have a high likelihood of getting it, Percher said. Human-caused climate change and the urban heat island effect contribute to 2020's weather as well. Concrete and asphalt absorb the sunlight during the day and radiate the heat throughout the night in the Phoenix metro area, exacerbating already rising temperatures due to climate change. The average temperature in the valley has increased by 4.35 degrees since 1970, according to a 2019 report by Climate Central. Number 3. Biggest fire season. In 2020, a single wildfire in California has reached the stunning size of more than 1 million acres, becoming the first gigafire in the state in decades. As of October 6, 2020, the August complex fire in the northern part of the state had burned at least 1,003,300 acres and was 54% contained, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, or CAL FIRE. The area that has burned since the fire ignited on August 16th is larger than Rhode Island and spans 7 counties. The blaze is just one of almost 24 major wildfires in the Golden State at that time, in what had already been an extraordinary year for these sweeping infernos. Across the state, fires had burned a record-shattering 4 million acres in 2020. The 4 million mark is unfathomable. At least 31 people died in California as a result of the fires, and millions were facing the health risks of deadly air pollution as clouds of smoke settled over urban areas. The fires had also destroyed more than 8,000 structures. And it's not just California that had been burned badly. Western states including Oregon, Washington and Colorado had also seen severe wildfires in 2020. It's the breathtaking culmination of bad luck, years of poor forestry practices, urban development and climate change. Number 2. The world's largest storm. Typhoons are no joke. They wreak havoc in their path and destroy people's lives in one swoop. Typhoon Tip was the largest and most intense tropical cyclone ever recorded. The typhoon was born from a disturbance within the monsoon trough on October 4th near Pohnpei in Micronesia. Eventually, it grew into a super typhoon and reached its peak sustained wind speed of 190 miles per hour. The storm had a diameter of 1,380 miles and resulted in 99 deaths in total. Even though the intensity of the typhoon reduced before entering Japan, it was still deadly enough to cause various landfalls and destroyed many properties. The rainfall from the typhoon resulted in a fire which killed 13 and injured 68 Marines stationed at Camp Fuji in Shizuoka Prefecture. The typhoon finally dissipated on October 24th near the Aleutian Islands. Number 1. A million-year rainstorm. If you thought the great flooding that took over the planet during Noah's time was bad, then wait till you hear about the million-year rainstorm called the Carnian Pluvial Event, or CPE. Some believe that between 234 and 232 million years ago, a great deluge began which changed life on Earth forever. The deluge was brought about by climate change and volcanic eruptions, but apparently we should be thankful for this traumatic event that may have occurred millions of years before our time. If not for CPE, we would not have come into existence. Scientists believe CPE ravaged the planet in such a way that it set the stage for new life to evolve, which includes some of the first coral reefs, trees, reptiles and dinosaurs. If so, then our story would be tied closely to this mass extinction event that allowed life to evolve into what we see and know today. Makes you wonder how life would have turned out if the Carnian Pluvial event didn't happen. If you have to choose between one of the 10 natural events, which ones seem the most terrifying to you? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, be sure to hit like, share and subscribe. Catch you next time.